In a peaceful small town, a father's joy was destroyed in an unexpected way. But the truth behind his son's death was darker than anyone dared imagine. Get a box of popcorn and sit tight as you watch a story like no other, The Sheikh's Last Test. The first light of dawn crept over the small town, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. The call to prayer for dawn prayer echoed gently through the cool morning air, wrapping the streets in a sense of peace that only those who truly listen can feel. In a modest home near the mosque, Sheikh Hamid awoke before the call to prayer, just as he had done for decades. His hands, worn by time and work, prostrated momentarily as he whispered a silent prayer of gratitude to Allah. He rose quietly, careful not to disturb the figure still sleeping in the next room, his only son, Ahmad. Ahmad was in his 20s, tall, with the brightness of youth still shining in his eyes. He was the pride of his father's heart, not because of wealth or status, but because of his kindness, his respect for elders, and his unwavering love for Allah. After performing his ablution, Sheikh Hamid gently tapped on his son's door. "Ahmad, my son, it's time." A muffled voice replied, warm and respectful, "Coming, father." Minutes later, the two stepped out together into the crisp morning air, walking side by side toward the mosque. Ahmad carried a small Quran tucked in his chest pocket, as was his habit. The streets were quiet except for the distant footsteps of neighbors heading the same way. After prayer, they lingered in the mosque. Ahmad recited softly while his father sat beside him, eyes closed, listening to the melodic flow of Allah's words. It was in these moments that Sheikh Hamid felt his heart the lightest. The day began with its usual rhythm. Ahmad helped his father in the small shop they owned, greeting customers with a smile, offering fair prices, never turning away someone in need. Those who knew him would often say, "Ahmad is the kind of young man you pray for your daughter to marry." As the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in warm orange, Sheikh Hamid looked at his son across the shop counter and thought, "Alhamdulillah, this boy is my blessing in this world." But as the evening settled in, somewhere else in the same town, another man walked the streets with a heart full of shadows. A man whose path was about to collide with theirs, and change both of their lives forever. While Sheikh Hamid and Ahmad ended their day in the calm light of Qur'anic recitation, across town another story was unfolding, one born not from peace but from pain. Kareem lived in a cramped, dimly lit apartment above a noisy street market. The walls were stained from years of neglect, the air heavy with the smell of fried food and cigarette smoke drifting in from the alley below. The constant noise outside, vendors shouting, carts rolling, stray cats fighting, seemed to echo the chaos inside his own mind. Kareem was in his 30s, but the lines on his face made him look older. Life had not been gentle with him. His father had died when he was still a child, leaving his mother to raise him, and his younger sister alone. She worked long hours as a cleaner, often too tired to notice when her son began skipping school, falling into the company of boys who spent their nights gambling, drinking, and wandering the streets. By his late teens, Kareem was already known to the local police, petty theft, street fights, small-time scams. But behind his roughness was a deep hunger, for respect, for security, for a life that felt worth living. That hunger had only grown sharper over the years. Now Kareem found himself entangled in debt. The kind of debt you don't owe to banks, but to men whose smiles never reached their eyes. Men who spoke in low, calm voices while their fingers tapped on knives resting on the table. They had given him money months ago, easy money, they called it, but easy money becomes heavy chains. Tonight, Kareem sat at a small wooden table in his apartment, his head in his hands. On the table lay a crumpled piece of paper with numbers scrawled in angry handwriting, the amount he owed, and the date payment was due. That date was tomorrow. A knock on the door jolted him. He opened it to find one of the debt collectors, a tall man with a cold grin, standing there. "Kareem," he said quietly, "tomorrow, or you know what happens." The man left without another word, and Kareem stood in the doorway long after the footsteps faded. He had no money. No plan, and the only person he could think of who might have the means to help was Ahmad, the young man he'd seen in the market a few times, polite, well-dressed, always carrying himself like someone who had never tasted hunger. Kareem muttered under his breath, "People like him, they live in another world." They don't know what it's like for the rest of us. But desperate men don't have the luxury of pride. And so, as the call for Isha echoed faintly from the mosque down the street, Kareem made a decision that would set his feet on a path he could never walk back from. The next morning, the town stirred to life under the golden rays of the sun. In the marketplace, stalls were opening, merchants calling out to early customers, and the scent of fresh bread drifted through the air. Ahmad was at his father's shop, arranging jars of honey and sacks of dates with his usual care. He greeted passers-by with warmth, the kind of smile that came from the heart, not from habit. For him, every customer was more than a sale, it was a chance to connect, to exchange a kind word, to live his faith in small acts. Kareem, meanwhile, had been awake since before dawn, pacing his small apartment like a caged animal. The ticking clock seemed louder than usual. Every second brought him closer to the deadline. His pride burned inside him, he hated asking for help, but the weight of fear crushed it. By mid-morning, he stepped out into the bustling streets, his eyes scanning for Ahmad's shop. He found it easily, the small green awning, the open wooden door, the faint sound of Quran playing softly inside. Kareem paused outside, watching Ahmad laugh with an elderly customer, gently wrapping a package of dried figs for her. Something about that smile annoyed Kareem. He's never had to fight for anything in his life, he thought bitterly. Taking a deep breath, Kareem stepped inside. Ahmad looked up immediately, his face breaking into a welcoming smile. Assalamu alaikum, brother. How can I help you? Kareem hesitated. His voice came out rough. I need some money. Not much. Just for a few days. I'll pay you back. Ahmad's smile softened into a look of concern. I'm sorry, brother. I don't lend money for personal use. But if you need food, or something for your family, I can give that to you right now, no payment needed. Kareem's jaw tightened. I'm not asking for charity, he snapped. Ahmad remained calm. I understand. But the best way I can help is in a way that's halal and safe for both of us. If you need work, I can pay you to help in the shop for a few days. It wasn't the answer Kareem wanted. He felt the eyes of other customers on him, imagined they were judging him. Humiliation rose like fire in his chest. He muttered something under his breath and turned on his heel, leaving the shop without another word. From behind the counter, Ahmad watched him go, a quiet sadness in his eyes. He didn't know it yet, but that short encounter had planted a seed. And sometimes, seeds grow into flowers. Other times, they grow into thorns. The midday sun blazed over the market, baking the stones underfoot. Kareem walked aimlessly through the narrow alleys, the sting of humiliation still fresh in his chest. Every step echoed the memory of Ahmad's calm refusal, not harsh, not mocking, but pitying. And that, to Kareem, was worse than insult. He tried to shake the thought from his mind, but the faces of the debt collectors came back to him. Their eyes were cold, their smiles thin. He knew what tomorrow meant in their language, tomorrow meant pain, and maybe worse. By late afternoon, Kareem found himself in the back corner of a smoky coffee house. The air was thick with shisha, the low hum of voices broken by occasional bursts of laughter from men playing cards. Across the table from him sat two of his old friends, men who thrived on trouble. Still owe those guys, one of them asked, tapping ash from his cigarette. Kareem nodded. Then you need to stop wasting time with polite people. You want money? You take it. The word slid into Kareem's mind like oil into cracks. He took a long drag from the shisha hose, staring at nothing. The idea wasn't new, he'd taken things before, but the thought of targeting someone like Ahmad was different. Ahmad was untouchable in the community. Loved. Respected. And yet, wasn't that why it would work? Ahmad wouldn't fight. He wouldn't scream. He wouldn't call the police. By sunset, Kareem had convinced himself that Ahmad owed him. Not in money, but in the unfairness of life. Why should one man sleep in comfort while another drowns in debt? Night fell. The street lamps flickered weakly, their light barely reaching the shadows between buildings. Kareem walked alone, the taste of bitterness heavy in his mouth. Above him, the moon hung low, a pale witness to the choices forming in his mind. Somewhere across town, Ahmad was closing the shop with his father, unaware that in another corner of the city, resentment had begun to boil into something far more dangerous. The call for Maghrib drifted gently through the streets, wrapping the town in a golden hush. Shopkeepers closed their stalls, families gathered for dinner, and the air was filled with the scent of warm bread and spiced lamb. In the small home near the mosque, Ahmad and his father sat on the floor for their evening meal. A simple spread, fresh bread, olives, dates, and a small dish of honey. The old man tore a piece of bread, dipped it into the honey, and passed it to his son with a smile. "Ahmad," he said softly, "do you know why I always keep honey on the table?" Ahmad smiled. "Because you like it too much, father." The old man chuckled. "Because our prophet said, honey is a cure for every illness, and the Quran is a cure for what is in the hearts. I want you to remember that both the body and the soul need sweetness." After dinner, Ahmad helped clear the dishes while his father prepared for Isha. They prayed side by side, their voices joining in quiet supplication. When the prayer ended, Ahmad reached for his Quran, as he did every night, and began reciting in a voice that filled the small home like a river of light. Sheikh Hamid sat back, eyes closed, letting the words of Allah wash over him. He thought of the years gone by, the first time Ahmad had taken his first steps, the day he had learned his first surah, the way he had grown into a man without losing his gentle nature. As the night deepened, father and son spoke quietly about their plans for the next day. Ahmad mentioned wanting to visit a neighbor who had been ill. His father nodded, proud of his son's thoughtfulness. Outside, the streets were growing quiet. The market stalls stood empty, the flicker of the lanterns casting long shadows on the stone walls. Somewhere in those shadows, Kareem walked alone, his mind a storm of resentment and desperation. But in this house, there was only peace, a fragile, beautiful peace that neither Ahmad nor his father knew would be shattered before the next sunset. The sun rose warm and bright the next morning, painting the market in light and shadow. Ahmad opened the shop early, sweeping the floor and arranging baskets of fresh produce by the door. He hummed softly to himself, his mind already on the visit he planned for the sick neighbor later in the day. By mid-morning, the street outside was alive, merchants calling out their prices, the clink of coins, the rustle of cloth in the wind. Ahmad's father had stepped out to meet a friend, leaving him alone in the shop. Kareem had been pacing for hours before he finally made his way there. His face was tight, his eyes sharp. He hadn't slept. Every hour that passed brought the debt collectors closer, and his mind clung to a single thought: this is the last chance. When he stepped into the shop, Ahmad greeted him with a warm, "Assalamu alaikum, brother." "Save it," Kareem cut him off. "I'm not here for pleasantries. I need that money today." Ahmad's smile faded, but his tone remained steady. "Kareem, I told you yesterday, I can't lend you money like this. If you want work, I'll pay you fairly." "But..." Kareem slammed his palm onto the counter. "Work? You think I have time for that? I'm drowning, Ahmad. And you're standing there with your clean clothes and your tidy shop acting like you're better than me." Ahmad stepped back slightly, his hands open in a calming gesture. "I don't think I'm better than you, brother. I can't give you something in a way that's not right. It wouldn't be good for either of us." A few customers in the shop froze, glancing between them. The air grew heavy, thick with unspoken tension. Kareem's voice dropped to a low growl. "You have no idea what happens to people who can't pay their debts. Maybe I should make you understand." Ahmad's heart pounded, but he didn't raise his voice. "Threats won't change the truth, Kareem. If I help you, it has to be in a way that pleases Allah." The words seemed to strike Kareem like a slap. His pride, his fear, his humiliation, they all flared into something darker. His jaw tightened, his fists clenched. For a moment, he looked ready to strike. But instead, he turned sharply and stormed out, leaving the door swinging on its hinges. From behind the counter, Ahmad watched him disappear into the crowd, a knot forming in his chest. He didn't know that the next time they met, it would be the last. The afternoon sun was harsh, turning the narrow streets into a maze of shimmering heat. Ahmad was closing up the shop for their prayer when he saw Kareem again, standing at the far end of the street, his gaze fixed on him. There was something in Kareem's eyes that made Ahmad's stomach tighten, not just anger but a wild desperation. Kareem walked toward him with quick, sharp steps. His hands were clenched, his breathing heavy. People nearby sensed the tension and stepped aside, leaving the path between them clear. "We're going to settle this now," Kareem said, his voice low but shaking. Ahmad raised a hand in peace. "Kareem, please, let's talk calmly. We can find another way." But Kareem cut him off with a shove that sent Ahmad stumbling back against the shop door. "Another way? You think there's another way when men are waiting to break your bones?" A small crowd began to gather, whispers spreading. The air felt tight, heavy, as if the whole street was holding its breath. Ahmad's voice was steady but firm. "I can't give you what you're asking, not like this. It's haram, and I won't displease Allah for anyone." The words, meant as a reminder, struck Kareem's pride like a spark in dry grass. His face twisted, the veins in his neck standing out. Before Ahmad could step away, Kareem's hand shot out. The slap came fast, followed by a sudden, violent strike to Ahmad's head, harder than Kareem had intended. Ahmad's eyes widened in shock as his legs buckled beneath him. The world seemed to slow. Ahmad's body hit the ground with a dull thud. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Kareem froze, staring down at what he had done. His breath came in ragged bursts. Ahmad's lips moved faintly, as if to say something, but no sound came. Then his eyes fluttered shut. Somewhere, a woman screamed. Someone else shouted for help. And Kareem, he turned and ran. Through the alleyways past the startled faces, away from the scene, but not from the reality that would follow him for the rest of his life. On the ground, Ahmad lay still, his Quran lying just inches from his hand, the pages fluttering in the hot breeze.
Sheikh Hamid stood in the silence of the night, his heart torn between grief and justice. Somewhere in the darkness, Kareem's shadow moved, unaware that his next step would bring him face to face with a truth he could never escape. But in the next part, a voice will rise in the marketplace, a voice that could either save Kareem, or condemn him forever. If you felt the weight of this moment, don't just stop here, hit the like button to support the message, subscribe to join our growing family, and turn on the notification bell so you're the first to witness part 2. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next.